morning. Okay. All right, good morning, everyone. Okay, Shanta, that's what I thought. Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Building Permits and Housing Starts, and then we'll stay in the room for actually, the gold open will take place first, oil and Q. My name is Lee Goldstein. I'm the trading director for 10-Minute Trades. Please remember, all the trades we discuss for educational purposes. It's possible to lose money trading futures. Trade carefully, please. And it looked like we were going to get a magnet trade on gold, and it didn't take place. It didn't fail, but it hasn't quite taken place yet. Gold's above the VWAP at the moment, but it's a little bit negative. I think it's going to test that high. It's so close. It will probably test that high. I'm showing a pretty small ATR this morning, Mark. I'm showing, between a 6 and an 8 on gold. ATR 7, yeah. That's what I thought. Very small, very quiet morning this morning. Very quiet morning. So the biggest issue facing us this morning is the safety of trading gold on a DMM that I talked to my boss, and this is one report we have not had time to completely rework it or to do a lot of testing on it. My recommendation is for people to probably, I think it's somewhat risky to trade it in the current setup because it's a small bracket. It's really a DMM for a market pre-Ukrainian crisis. It's a small report in general. We have an alternative setup. We just haven't had enough time to test it on a live market. I've done some testing, some back testing for it, and it looks pretty good. I'm not sure that I'm willing to risk hundreds of dollars on the testing yet. That's what I have to decide this morning. I mean, you'd have to risk a couple of hundred because the stop would be 20 to 25 ticks, not 10, like it is with gold. And gold's $100 of risk. We have an NQ setup that we've been looking at. And there is a trap trade setup on gold that we've been looking at, but I'm being truthful. We have not had enough time to run through all the testing on this particular report. And it's partly because it's not a super important report. But you know what? Any report can be a family money trade in the long run, and any report can make money. So every report is important, and every report is justifiable for testing. So it was just a question of time. But here's the truth. Even if all the testing was done, some reports, they just need maybe one test on a live market to see if your testing is good enough. This might be one of those reports that I might want to test one time on a live market. Or what we could do today, what I might do is just trade the MNQ live with our new setup. And that way, you can test it live, see if it works, but you're not risking hundreds of dollars. So that's my gut feeling, is I'll MNQ it. And I think that might be a more sensible approach. The gold open is 15 minutes away. So, Mark, my question for you is building permits and housing starts a big enough news event for you to trade gold? In other words, you like to trade the gold open when there's news. This to me is not strong enough news necessarily to be trading gold. You know what I'm saying? Right. So if Globex is very quiet, your tendency is to not trade the open, correct? Yeah, that's what I thought. That's what I thought. So why am I always asking Mark questions? Everybody wants to know. First of all, 3, 4 weeks ago, you should have seen the interview I did with Mark. So, Mark is a member and he knows a lot of stuff. And if he's been doing something longer than I have and has good experience with it and is making money at it and he's willing to share, then I'm happy to ask him questions. And that's the situation. He's making money. He's trading the opens, somewhat similar to the way we do. Nobody does things exactly. But he's had some good advice, and he's like my de facto online, offline consultant. Is CL going crazy, Chantal? I mean, it's so difficult to look at everything and do everything in a half an hour before. Yeah, crude had a gigantic sell-off while we're talking, and now it's pulling up. So right now we're not ready for crude. So we'll look at crude later. What a dump. That was big. So it was like 106 and it went over $1 and now it's back partially. So, we've said this a million times. You might want to concentrate on one market. If you concentrate on too many markets, you just may not have trades. Okay. So I think what we'll do this morning is I agree with Mark. We haven't been trading the gold open regularly. Chantal, I can't. I didn't even test it. I didn't even test it. The NQ ranges looked pretty good. They looked pretty good. So look, here's the question. What gives us the most value? What gives us the most value this morning? I think we can pass on the gold open. And what we can do is we could find out how to trade this report. Okay. We can find out how to trade this report. I mean, that's what we could kind of do. And we could do it. I'll tell you something. We could do it um, without a lot of risk. Here's what we can do. We can trade. We have a setup. So Chantal, let's quickly talk about that setup. All right. We have two different setups for the building permits housing starts. We've got a trap trade in gold, and we've got a range trade or a breakout on the NQ. And there's also the gold open. All right. The gold open, we can test it. It's not a problem, but I'm not trading the gold open live this morning. I'm waiting for a strong, like I agree with Mark, I want a strong news report to help with the volatility. But we can certainly test the gold open because we're here and we can test it and lose nothing by testing it. So my gold open, and it should be about a 22 tick stop. I think our normal stop is fine. My first target is 8. My second target, I'm not going to go for small targets this morning because I don't want to stay in the trade. I'm going to go for 8 and 15 on my open targets. My stop is 20. We use the squeeze play to enter. And like I said, I'm not trading this particular trade live. Okay. So that's trade number 1. If it hits my first target, my stop moves to break even -3 using the target 1 stop mode. Okay, so my gold open trade is set up. That's a manual entry using tick strike at 820 if we get the signal. Okay, if we get the signal, I'm going to set up. Oh, I don't know if I can do this. So I'm going to try and also test the trap trade live because it's not a lot of risk. It's not a lot of risk. And let me explain what my trap trade setup is. Chantal, I don't know if you have the ability to check my numbers, but it might be helpful. The trap trade is small. It's small. I'm slightly changing your entry, Chantal, just to make it so that there's a fill. So my first tier, I think you had 8. Let me pull I can pull your data up. So let's pull it up if I can find it. Building permits, building permits. Give me a second, folks. Let me see if I have the testing easily handy. I've got to download it. Give me a second. Let me get it the right way. I want the right file. Two seconds, folks. Okay, it's a small trap trade. And I'm using tiers of 6 and 10. 6 and 10. Six and 10. The time of the event is 8:30. I'm using a 5-second prep. I don't remember what you said about prep, 5 or 10 seconds. I'm going to use 5. My tiers are 6 and 10. And my stop, give me a second. Looks like 10 should work for the stop. Looks like 10 should work for the stop. Yeah, 5 and 10 might be good too, Chantal. I agree, because the markets are quiet. We want to get filled, so we have a chance of the trade working. Could probably do 5, maybe even 5. Oh, you're talking the stop. No, let's leave the bracket. I wanted to go in. Let's leave the bracket. The bracket was, oh, you were talking about the prep. Yeah, I would go 5 on the prep. I'll go 6 on the entry. 6 and 10, I think, is okay. 6 and 10 is okay. 10 on the stop. And let me just make sure I have my stop correct. And I'm going to try that live, okay? But I have to set my charts up after the gold open. I have to change my charts after the gold open. So I'm not going to set that up to trigger yet. We'll do the gold open first. And then, now normally on the NQ, it was a gold breakout trade. University of Michigan was filled early on the gold breakout. And it would have been a stop out if not for an emergency quick move of, we got lucky and target 1 was hit. The point is this. The point is this. Give me a second. I want to change the right account. The point is, it was unsafe because the DMM didn't take into effect enough market volatility. It's not really anyone's fault because you can't always anticipate how volatile the markets are going to be a month in advance. Sometimes we don't know. Now, we may be getting that magnet trade before the open. The range trade on the NQ is actually supposed to be +4 -4. So there's a lot to try here. +4 -4. Going to go for small targets, 8 and 20. Way smaller than I've done in my testing. My stop is going to be 20 on the range. And my range start time, 8, 29:30. To 8:29:59. And it's a range. I was thinking of trying the breakout this morning, but the range is a little bit safer. You have a chance to cancel if things don't look good. So we'll see if I can get the gold open going in time. So my range trade is set up on the NQ for building permits and housing starts. The gold open, we're going to test now. We have enough time to check our time sync. We've got a minute and a half. Now, it might be that today the gold breakout is safe on building permits and housing starts because the markets are so quiet. But, as long as these wars are going on, as long as these issues of inflation are around, I think the markets are just quiet today because every now and then the markets just need to be quiet, you know? Now I'll fix my trap trade. My gold open is a test. My trap trade account needs to be fixed. So let's watch the gold open. I'm waiting to see if we get a signal at 820. Probably a little bit too much to concentrate on here. There's your test of the open. So I want to, if we had gotten here a half hour earlier, I would have taken the magnet trade, maybe instead of the gold open. So now the question is, what kind of signal are we going to get at 820? So that's a strong signal. 13. That's a strong signal. Now, this morning, I don't want to hang around in trades, so I'm not going to manage it. I'm going to combine my orders, see if it works well enough to hit my target, because I'm only going to spend a couple of minutes in it. Now, I don't think that was necessarily a bad entry, but if you think about it, it was at a new high, which is hard. It's much harder to have a good trade when you're at a new high. But gold's been also definitely pushing since we got here. So that was the direction I would have wanted to be filled. I might have been a tiny bit slow on it too, to be honest. But I'm only going to give it a couple of minutes because it's a test and my other setups are real because we want to see what the reality of building permits, housing starts can be. And so the question is, did I do anything wrong? Did I do anything wrong on my entry? Any of you experienced gold open traders, feel free to yell at me if you think I took the wrong signal. Do you think that was the wrong signal to take because it was at the just finished making a new high? Maybe. That's something you have to think about. If you've got the trade was before the open this morning, and that's not an unreasonable concept. It's not an unreasonable concept. Our stop is below all the ranges, so I don't think the stop's in a bad place. I'm just going to check my NQ range trade while we're sitting here because I am testing the MNQ. So I've got a range trade. I think we can shrink the ticks above to 3 because the market's so quiet. Yeah, it was a test of the high, Chantal. I definitely recognize you hate those trades. I know you hate them. Oh, and the one important thing on the NQ, if target one gets hit, move the stop to break even. So the gold trade did not work. Break even -3 if target one gets hit on the range trade. Okay. So the gold open did not work. Okay, I can't cancel it. Let me just double check my range. So we've got a range trade MNQ, 829.59 is entry, range start time, 829.30. If there's not much movement, I would consider canceling. although this particular trade did fill slowly, where it took more than a minute or about a minute to get set. So the gold open didn't work, but we know if you take a signal right at the high of the day, you're increasing your risk. Okay. It is an increase in risk. So, that's, and also we haven't tested many gold opens. I'm not embarrassed to say I don't mind testing it. You know, it was also, it's not huge news. We want to trade gold opens when the news is bigger, like jobs, CPI, GDP. Okay. Now our trap trade's not letting me enter the data. That's because I changed accounts a few minutes ago. So I'll just go back to the trap. We have a stop of 10, one position on position one on position two, tiers of 6 and 10. The event is 8:30, the trade time or the time of the event, and the activation preparation is 5 seconds, and we just need to put our account in. That's why it wasn't letting me choose anything. And then the label is already set. So now the trap trade is ready to go. Charts go on live. And this gives us a real test whether or not our setup makes any sense. Now, what I'm going to do is move my news off to the side so I can trade a full size chart with a trap trade, which is helpful. Okay. And we'll check our time sync. So we've got a range trade that we're testing on the MNQ. And we've got a trap trade we're testing on the MGC. Okay. Now, MGC is a low liquidity, pretty poor volume micro, but with a trap trade, because of the nature of what a trap trade is, it's an opposite direction trade. By definition, that equals low slippage. So trading the MGC on a trap trade is pretty good. It's usually a pretty good test. So here's my news off to the side. I'm not expecting, and I don't use extra indicators for this particular report. This is a traditional trade. So I hope I didn't confuse everyone. I want to thank everybody that's watching us. Stephen, good morning to you on YouTube. And why don't you hit that like button, folks? Hit the like button. Sign up for the channel. And then if you sign up for the channel and hit the notification bell, you'll know the next time we're streaming. Wouldn't you rather come into the trade room? Wouldn't you rather come into the trade room? Is anybody testing the DMM exactly as it is? Is anybody testing the DMM exactly as it is? If anybody wants to do that, trading gold as a breakout, I'd love to see that. In sim, I'm not sure that today is, I just don't know that gold's going to respond. That's been the issue. Getting gold to respond to small reports. That's what I'm was concerned about. And a 6-tick bracket is a rather small bracket. Okay. They're expecting, and the other thing we've been seeing with building permits and housing starts is they used to often agree, meaning direction. The news would be good on both, bad on both. Lately, they've been mixed, good on one, bad on the other. But this is an interesting way to test without $400 of risk. Look, I realize $400 to some people is a drop in the bucket. It's a drop in the bucket. But we do have members with small accounts that want to trade these reports. And sometimes doing it with micros is very educational and helpful. And then we'll stick around for the oil open. And then we'll stick around for the NQ open. And then don't forget to register for Netflix because it's in our GoToWebinar room with API. Both of them are in our GoToWebinar room. Okay, here's our range for the NQ. And then we're going to get 5 seconds before the news. We'll get our tiers. And maybe I'll give the tiers 30 to 45 seconds to see if it fills. So the news comes out. You have a little bit of a, not a big move in gold. The news is positive. The news is positive. The NQ's doing nothing. Okay, it's doing absolutely nothing. It's going to fill, it looks like, but the news is good. I'm going to let it play out. The NQ, the trap trade doesn't look like it's going to work. The NQ looks like it wants to hit that first target, maybe. Maybe not. Maybe not. Looks like the NQ is not going to work. The stop should be above the range, though, in my opinion. It may still stop out, but it should be above the range. So NQ did not work at all. And we got filled in the wrong direction. Gold should head down. It should head down on this report. That's what it should do. The NQ, little bit wrong direction. Maybe I can take a little bit of blame for allowing it to get filled on the short side. Maybe I'll take some blame for allowing that fill. So NQ trap, I want to look at the video before I comment further. We'll look at the video. Oops. All right, so now I have to manage this manually. So we want this to go down. I want this to go down and hit a target, okay? I want it to go down and hit a target. Now it filled us to the short side on the news. So we'll give it, but we've got time. We've got plenty of time. We have a 10-tick stop, if I remember correctly, right? Somewhere in there. So it's either going to work or it's not. But it's not a lot of horrific risk. And then we'll look at the video and see why the range trade didn't work. Now, look, you've got an upward move going on the range. On the NQ, the news was good, and it was a pretty good offset, too. A lot of houses being built, a lot of permits, a lot of starts, quite a bit more than expected. Quite a bit more than expected. But the trap just not really doing much of anything. I don't think it's gonna get to our target. Target looks too big. It just looks like gold is asleep this morning. It just looks asleep. So this is not a bad morning to take low risk. Not a bad morning to take low risk. Now the NQ, I think that on a range trade, if you have time and you see a news result that should make the index truly go in a direction that you really know is the right direction, I could have been, and we haven't done it very much, but I could have been proactive and moved my order, moved my short order away. I could have, and I don't think that that's a bad way to have dealt with this trade this morning. It could have saved $25. Okay, it could have saved $25. It looks like the trap's not going to work. I mean, I'll give it a few minutes. This is, we're not really trading the news anymore. We're just trading the gold market, chopping around. I mean, that's the honest truth. Gold didn't do enough. It really didn't do much on this report. So it's a question of whether or not gold's going to just, whatever direction it decides it wants to go. That's what's going to happen on this trade. It was just too small of a move. At this point, I don't see any point in really being in the trade. I don't see any point. So if it starts to drop, I'll shrink my stop a little bit. Okay. So it hit my small target. It hit my small target. I mean, I agree. I mean, it just wasn't really a trap trade to speak of. Not enough movement, not enough original move from the trade itself. Do you follow me? In other words, the idea of a trap trade is you want an original move and then a move in the opposite direction. Just wasn't enough of a reaction in general. Not enough of a reaction in general. Let's look at the video real quick and then see on the range trade. It's something to consider to improve the way that we trade a range. It's not an unreasonable thought. So of course gold decides to go crazy down now because we got out of the trade. It's so ridiculous. But it's not because of the news. You're dealing with totally random, you're dealing with, just price action, not news action. So, I mean, it could have gone up also. It wouldn't have, it's not based on anything in reality. Give me 1 second. But it's a shame because we could have had some profit back. Could have had like $20 back, more. Now it looks like gold wants to test the low. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. It looks like it wants to test the low. I mean, that's a magnet trade getting ready to take place. Gold's now down $8. Maybe too late. It's probably too late by the time I put a strategy on. So is it worth getting in to a test of the low? If I did it, I would do it with the 1-click range short. So it doesn't put me in immediately. But if I do it, I want my charts on live, right? If I'm going to do it. Can we possibly get a test of the low and the high in the same session? So right now, it's changing direction. All right. Right now it's changing direction. I'm going to give it a minute and see. You can put an order in at the 1-click range short, right? You could, but not on a green candle. I wouldn't. So what could happen? It could just jolt down because gold, especially micro gold, can do that. But I would not put on a short order when you have a green candle, right? And there's no law that says you can't get some help from the indicator, right? You don't have to go long, short, if you're not getting signal help, right? I think it's going to test the low, but MGC is pretty herky-jerky. We do want to get ready for the oil open. So we could get stuck in a gold trade to trade a magnet trade and miss the oil open. So I think we'll do what we're here to do. We'll go over to the oil open, okay? Especially because price actions now looks like it's moving up a little bit. Whew. Just watching. I wanted to watch the video on the range trade because look at now, it's going in our direction. Not entering, there's no signals. That's not necessarily a rule for a magnet trade. You don't have to have signals, in my opinion. But I don't go short on green candles generally. Generally, I wouldn't. So just watching the NQ selling off now. I don't want to miss the oil open because you could wind up sitting in a trade for 10 minutes before it tests that low. I do believe it's going to test that low. It's 1978. It's $3 away. So look, let's go to oil. Maybe it's not going to test the low right now. Keep an eye on it and you'll see. I'm going to look at MNQ on one side. I'm going to look at oil on this side. Gold open goes away. All right, I want to thank everybody on YouTube. We're here with YouTube for building permits and housing starts, Chantal. So we are done streaming. I want to just give everyone on YouTube an opportunity to join us in the trade room with a quick trade room offer before we go. Remember, on YouTube, it's delayed watching on YouTube. You can come and join us in the trade room, www.jointhetraderoom.com. So definitely come join us in the trade room, www.jointhetraderoom.com. We'd love to see you in there. And thank you very much for watching. And our next stream will be tomorrow.